Hello, I'm Jeremy Love, coordinator for CodeStack's team, and today we're going to be creating a platform-style video game. In a platform game, the player-controlled character must run and climb and jump to avoid obstacles and enemies in order to reach a goal. To create our game, we're going to use MakeCode Arcade. To get to MakeCode Arcade, just type in arcade.makecode.com. Once you get there, your screen will look like this, and you click New Projects. Now you're going to have to name your project, so we're going to name our project My First Platform Game. Once you do that, click Create. Here you have the MakeCode Arcade interface. You have your arcade simulator. Any code you create will be run here. You can program the directional pad, the menu, and the A and B buttons. On the arcade simulator, you click here to run your code and view it. Anytime you add code or make changes, it'll automatically reset the arcade simulator. You click here to stop the game at any point. Over here, you have your undo and redo buttons. You can also zoom in or zoom out of your code block editor. You have your toolbox. This is where you'll find all of your code blocks. The blocks are all color coded. In this area, you'll drag and drop blocks to create your code. You can also switch from block coding to coding in JavaScript. Now, the arcade simulator screen is 160 by 120 pixels. Imagine a coordinate plane on top of the screen, with the coordinates 0, 0 at the top left corner. The x-axis goes from 0 to 160, and the y-axis goes from 0 to 120. This is going to be very important when we position our objects and create our game. Now that we know a little bit about MakeCode Arcade, let's get creating and let's get coding. The first thing we're going to do is create an environment for our player to interact with. So we're going to go to Scene, and we're going to go to Set Background Color, and we're going to put it into this OnStart block. Now we're going to set the background color. You can pick any color you want. I'm going to pick blue for a traditional looking sky. Now once you've created your background color, go back to Scene, and we're going to go to Set Tile Map. Now we're going to draw our environment. So I want you to click on the little square. And as you can see here, this is our drawing environment for our background. Now you'll see in this corner, our background is now 16 pixels by 16. We want it to be much wider than that. So we're going to change it to 50 by 8. Now you can click this hand tool here to move around the canvas so you can see better. And you can also zoom in and zoom out with this button. So now you see we have a long environment for our player to interact. Let's draw some terrain. In this corner here, you'll see various types of tiles. We have forest, and you can cycle through all of these. We have aquatic environments. We have a dungeon. And we also have miscellaneous. We're going to go back to forest. Remember, this is your project, so you can choose what you want your project to look like. I'm just going to pick this rocky ground, and once you have this, you'll see My Tiles. You click the pencil tool, and you just draw. Now, we want our character to have to run and jump and face obstacles. We don't want to make them too easy for him, so put some gaps. And I kind of want to erase this, so we can use the eraser tool to erase. Go back to the pencil tool, And I'm just going to add some platforms for him to jump on. Okay. We also need some kind of danger for him to face if he falls. So I'm going to go to miscellaneous. And let's put some lava down here. Finally, we need a finish line. So let me go to dungeon. Now remember, you are making your own game, so you should decide how you want your environment to look. But this will be his goal, or the finish line. Once you completed that, we have to do one more thing. In order for your player to interact with this environment, we have to make walls with this button. Now, once this is highlighted, anything that we highlight, the player will be able to run on. And anything that's not highlighted, he'll fall through. So all of your terrain, or anywhere you want the player to stand on top of, make sure you create walls. There we go. Walls, just like anything you draw, can be erased. Now, I said before, if you hit the eraser button, you can delete some walls. So let's go ahead and do that, because I don't want this finish line to be a complete wall. I want our character to be able to overlap it. So we're just going to erase a few of these, just like that. And then when you're finished, click Done. Now your environment is created. When we finish the game, you'll be able to side scroll through the whole environment. Now that I've created my environment, I'm going to create a character to interact with the environment. In order to do that, we're going to go to Sprites. We're going to add the Set My Sprite block right underneath your Set Tile Map block. Now we're going to draw a sprite, so click the little square here, and it will take you to your sprite creating editor. You can also choose a sprite from the variety of pre-made ones here, but we're going to draw our own. I'm really loving the show The Mandalorian, so I'm going to create a character that's kind of reminiscent of that. So we have our colors here. I'm going to choose brown, and we have our pencil, our eraser, our paint bucket to fill in big spaces. And I'm going to use all these tools to draw my character. Then after your sprite is created, you click Done, and it will show up on the screen. Now, we have our sprite just floating in the air, and we really can't have that. So he needs to have the effects of gravity on him. So in order to put those effects on him, we're going to go to Sprites. We're going to go to Set My Sprite X to 0. We're going to go to this drop-down menu and change the acceleration Y to, let's say, 400. This will make him drop to the ground. To add movement to the sprite, we're going to go to Controller, and we're going to bring out Move My Sprite with buttons. Click on this plus sign, and you'll see velocity X, which means the X-axis. That's horizontal, and velocity Y. Now, both of them have 100, and if you experiment with the directional pad, you'll see that if you go up, he'll go up, and if you go side to side, he'll go side to side. Now, we want to make the jump a different control, so we're going to change that to 0. So now, with the directional pad, we can move our sprite back and forth. Now, this script controls what happens at the start of the game, on start. we're going to add another script that controls what happens when you press the A button. So out of controller, just pull out that block, that bracket that says on A button pressed. And then we're going to pull out a if-then block. Now in that true, we're going to go to scene and scroll down to is my sprite hitting wall. As you can see, it's shaped in such a way that it can fit right in there. We're going to change this left to bottom. And finally, we're going to go back to Sprite, and we're going to go to set my sprites X. But we're going to change this menu to velocity Y, which means your speed vertically. And we're going to go -200. So now, when you press the A button, your sprite will jump. Now what we've just created with this if-then is known as a conditional statement. A conditional statement tells a program to execute a particular action depending on whether or not something is true or false. So for instance, if our sprite is on the ground, which is hitting the wall bottom, then he can jump. Now, we're going to add another script to set some winning and losing parameters to our game. Every game has to have a way to win and a way to lose. So let's set up the way to lose first. We're going to go to scene. We're going to go to on sprite of kind overlaps. Now, if our sprite hits our lava here, we can just select the tile, the lava tile. Then the game will be over. So go to game, game over, lose. I'm going to scroll up a little. We can test that out. He loses the game. Now, there has to be a way for him to win. So we're going to go back to scene. And we're going to go pull the same type of block out on sprite of kind player. But this time, if he overlaps our finish line, our little wall here, then we're going to have game over win. One last thing that we need to do is go back up to our first on start script, go to scene, and we're going to pull out a camera follows my sprite. That way, as our sprite moves, let me just move these down a little. That way, as our sprite moves across the screen, the camera will follow him. Now we're ready to test the game out. Now let's add a start screen. We're going to go to Game, scroll down to Splash. Make sure you put this first in the onStart script because that's the first thing that you want to happen. And you can put anything you want on your splash. I'm just going to put my first platform game. Maybe put an exclamation point there too. And there we go. So we have my first platform game. So the player would press A to begin the game. Now we're going to add one more level of complexity or one more level of difficulty to the game. Now, if you go to info, there's a bunch of different things that you can add to make your game your own. You can add lives, you can add scores, all sorts of things. We're just going to add a countdown. So we're going to put start countdown at the bottom of our on start script. That way, when the player starts the game, they'll only have 30 seconds to complete. Well, not 30 because I have it at 10, so I have to just change it here to 30. And now they have 30 seconds to complete the course. So there you go. You created your first platform game. I hope it won't be your last. And I encourage you to experiment and just play with MakeCode Arcade and see what you can come up with.